Some bad news for Letitia James to report at this moment. It looks like these mortgage troubles are growing increasingly bad for one Letitia James. We have a whole lot more on that story. Plus, the Canadian Prime Minister getting a bit humiliated there in the Oval Office. We're going to bring you the latest sound from him and from Donald Trump, who wants to remind him, never say never, about the whole 51st state thing. And you know what else? Donald Trump wants to. He's very serious about reopening Alcatraz. Alcatraz, out there in the lefty West Coast. Well, this will be interesting. Reminder, make sure you go and check out my website, 76 Research, for all things market related. The markets are a little bit lower right now. We should probably change that. But right now, at this moment, I still think that there's a lot of opportunity. Rob and I actually firmly believe this, and we get into it over there at 76 Research. So I remind you to take a look and use code word dollar. Letitia James, new trouble for this lady, okay? So there are these ethics complaints now that are mounting against her. And if you recall, we went through this recently the other day. We were talking about just exactly what's at stake here. You see, she applied for a loan that was federally backed. So this is like within the federal government's jurisdiction, right? Pam Bondi saying, gee, thank you very much. I appreciate this information coming forward. This is all about an application she made for a loan back in Norfolk, Virginia. And she said at that time that this property was her principal residence, Norfolk, Virginia. Last time I checked, Norfolk, Virginia was quite a ways, shall we say, from none other than New York, Albany, New York, where she is the Attorney General. And, being the Attorney General and being an attorney, that comes with a certain kind of expectation, shall we say. Lawyers are expected to uphold the law. Kind of like the judge out in Wisconsin that somehow took it upon herself to escort somebody who was believed to have engaged in domestic violence outside the courtroom because she didn't want him getting picked up by ICE, right? Taking matters into her own hands. And now the DOJ is pursuing that one, FBI as well. So this is kind of a similar thing, right? Letitia James getting a mortgage in Virginia and yet living in the state of New York and getting special privileges because she claimed erroneously that she lived in Virginia and that it would be her principal residence. So at this moment, the New York bar is considering these allegations against her and considering the filing of this ethics complaint by none other than America First, which is the legal arm, used to be run by none other than Stephen Miller. We know he's in the White House now. This sort of a legal entity that was looking to protect some of Donald Trump's interest. They went and filed this ethics complaint, and the ethics complaint is asking the New York bar to say, hey, wait a second. If this woman is guilty of having massaged the record, so to speak, or just downright lying, right? I mean, if you say you are going to live in Virginia so that you can get a better mortgage rate, but you're actually living in New York, then that would be kind of a problem. Now, these are just allegations at this point, but as this issue moves forward, as the DOJ continues its investigation, because now they've been alerted thanks to Pulte, well, then they may have a decision to make there in the state of New York. Now, Letitia wants you to know nothing to see her. She went on one of those MSNBC people that looks like a carbon copy of Rachel Maddow. Do you notice that? They all look alike, every single one of them. Anyway, she went on with this particular person, the male version, imagine that, of Rachel Maddow, who has a podcast and says she's not even going to dignify this, right? She's not going to respond to these allegations about mortgage fraud. Come on, give me a break.
I will respond to these baseless allegations at the appropriate time and in the appropriate way, but I am 100% confident that it will not result in any criminal indictment or action against me, and that it is nothing more than a revenge tour, and that Donald Trump just ultimately got to the J's, and I was next.
The key allegation, again, it sounds like you don't want to address them here, but I'm just going to put it out so people understand that a property that was owned in Virginia, and a mortgage that you signed, if I'm not mistaken, for that property, they say you falsely represented yourself as a resident of Virginia, and that was essentially amounts to mortgage fraud since you're a resident of New York. What is your response to that?
It's baseless. Everybody knows I'm a resident of New York, specifically Brooklyn. And again, we will respond at the appropriate time in the appropriate way to these baseless allegations. And some media outlets like the Daily News over the weekend has indicated as much.
That's all you want to say?
That's all that I'm going to say.
Yeah, and he's not going to push her on it, right? Because, oh gosh, she may not come back on his lovely little podcast. Heaven forbid, we can't book Letitia James. My gosh. You know what? Nobody's willing to ask her the hard questions. You know what really bugs me about this? The media is not willing to cover it at all. I mean, where have you seen this other than my show? I mean, honestly, like they've just dropped the thing. Like they're not even bothering with this story. Maybe a few times here and there on Fox or Newsmax, but for the most part, the mainstream media wants nothing to do with this. They think that this is somehow all fictitious. Look, I'm looking at these allegations, and guys, you don't put your dad down as your husband when you're applying for a loan. Oh, unless you're Ilhan Omar and you're doing something. Right? I mean, there's that whole issue. I digress. I guess that's all alleged too. But anyway, in this particular case, I'm still stuck on the fact, and you just go back to these allegations, and by the way, the America First team did an excellent job outlining them here. Additionally, they ran on another occasion, Ms. James appears to have misrepresented the number of dwelling units in a multi-dwelling building that she owned. She actually represented them as a different number because apparently you get a federally backed mortgage if you have a certain amount versus another. I mean, wow. So you're talking about manipulating your documents, manipulating facts in order to get federal funds. I mean, heck, Donald Trump, at least he was out there working with a private bank, for goodness sakes. I mean, she went after him to the tune of nearly it's over 500 million. What am I saying? $500 million, right? Letitia James trying to insist that somehow Donald Trump was guilty because he inflated the square footage on his house. I mean, 4 or 5 dwellings. In her case, you had to deflate. She couldn't admit she had 5, but she apparently did have 5. I mean, that's pretty wild when you think about it. That's pretty wild. I mean, it's incredible what she was able to get away with. This was a private transaction, ladies and gentlemen, right? Private transaction, and yet she was out there trying to bankrupt the guy if only she could. I remember it all so well.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court. And we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
Okay, so maybe we can seize yours, right, Letitia? I mean, if you did what is being alleged, you did. And what is being alleged is actually pretty darn serious, okay? Pretty darn serious. Again, she's kind of flipping out about this. And I think that she's using this new lawsuit saying, oh, we need money for HHS. You've got to give this money to us. She's using this new lawsuit as a way to distract. Look at this shiny toy over here. Okay, let's go after Trump again. I mean, she promised she'd go after him. She was so proud. She went after him 100 times before. Maybe she can double it this time around, 200 times after Donald Trump, and maybe another 500 million while we're at it. So she's going after HHS and saying, hey, we need this money, we need this money, we need this money. She's done it in various different ways before. Already we've seen the Supreme Court actually uphold the idea that, no, you know what? He doesn't just blanketly have to give you money. You need to be able to actually answer the questions that the federal government is asking you so that they can make sure, those in the federal government, that your policies are in line with what they have decided upon. Again, Fed versus state. This is what's fascinating about all of this right now, because we're coming to a moment in time where it's bubbling up into kind of, dare I say, civil war scenario. In other words, she wants to just keep going up against the federal government, up against the federal government, up against them. Oh, we're not going to give you the people from Rikers Island. Forget about it, right? We're going to protect everybody that's here in the state of New York, even if they're here illegally, even if they're a criminal. Well, that doesn't fly. Again, just go back to the Constitution. Go look at the Constitution, Letitia James. You're supposed to be a lawyer from, Howard University, which you keep telling us over and over again. Well, if you are so smart, go read the Constitution, and there it is that you will see if there's one power the federal government has, it is to control our border and to control who is here in the country, period, full stop. Anyway, she's in all kinds of trouble. So what is she trying to do? She's trying to distract with this new lawsuit, all while saying that she's not guilty, But I think, and when I show you this next soundbite of her just less than 24 hours ago, freaking out, flipping out, like totally unleashed, I think what this shows us is that she's getting scared. As well she should be, right? Take a look.
And you want me to sit in my seat and stand idly by and allow this craziness to happen? You could come after me if you want, but you elected me to stand up. You elected me to use the law. You elected me to go to court. You elected me to continue to challenge this administration. You elected me to stand up for the least of God's children. You elected me to continue fighting on. And I will fight on.
You'll fight. I mean, she's just unhinged in that video. Again, unhinged, but I think it has everything to do, ladies and gentlemen, with the fact that she's frightened. And that's why you're seeing lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. Oh, in addition, she kind of wants to get some political capital, right? Here she is, as you saw in that video, totally unhinged. And here is, I want to show you one Jonathan Turley, who's an American University law scholar, talking about how she is trying to pivot and how she really doesn't have any room to run on this new lawsuit that she has filed. Let's listen in.
Jonathan, I want to get your take on this one more thing before we go here. The Minneapolis Attorney's Office apparently wants prosecutors there to consider race as part of their thought process, decision-making when negotiating plea deals. Now, this is the Hennepin County Attorney, Mary Moriarty. As you know, she was elected, after the George Floyd riots, during that progressive movement to put in DAs and attorneys that would be a little bit more lenient. I imagine you have a lot of thoughts on this.
Well, she's ripping the blindfold off Lady Justice. And the whole idea of justice is that it is supposed to be blind. It's supposed to be based on the facts of the case. It's supposed to make victims not whole, but at least give them some vindication or some assistance for what was done to them. And this is, I think, going to really force the issue again, not just with the administration, but with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court just said not long ago that in college admissions, when you rely on race criteria, you're engaging in racial discrimination. And that's an even greater concern when we have race criteria being used in this way in the criminal justice system.
I wonder if this came up when she decided not to go after a Walt staffer who apparently allegedly vandalized a Tesla vehicle, or at least 6 of them. So I wonder if that was part of the thought process there. Jonathan Turley, thanks so much for joining us.
It's really kind of interesting. And as I said, I think that new video that just came out within the last 24 hours really points to how stressed this woman is about where she is. I do believe that she is worried, and that she is worried because she's going to lose her law license. And if she loses her law license, guess what? She's not going to be practicing as Attorney General for the state of New York. Don't forget, this came up about 10 months ago or so. Do you remember when Elise Stefanik, the congresswoman from New York, came forward and filed an ethics complaint against Letitia James? In that particular case, it was because, wow, she was just really egregious in terms of her going after Donald Trump, using everything she could for political purposes, right? Going after him with a very deliberate effort, even though she told you that wasn't the case. She tried to tell you, oh, no, this has nothing to do with anything. I'm not going after him just because he's Donald Trump. I'm going after him because I have to go. No. Are you kidding me? She went after him for one reason and one reason.
The President of the United States has complained that I'm engaging in some sort of political witch hunt, that I've got some personal vendetta against him, that I campaigned against him. That is not true. This illegitimate president who sits in the White House.
That president, because he's not my president, he's an illegitimate president. His days ready to mobilize, and we've got to get ready to agitate and irritate until victory is won, but more importantly, until Trump is defeated. We will all rise up and resist this man, and ultimately we'll bring him down. This illegitimate president, I'm going to give you the same level of respect that you gave to President Obama, and that is absolutely no respect at all. Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey!
Okay, you get the picture, right? In other words, she's out there saying, oh, I'm not doing this for political reasons. Well, what do you know? Of course she was doing it for political reasons. Like, nobody was born yesterday. And so what's happening now? Payback. Payback. Elise Stefanik wanted her to be examined for overly aggressive use of her attorney general's position, right? You can't have an environment where politicians are going after opposing party members just because they don't want them in office. She wanted to make sure that he could never run again. Well, they put a few people in charge of that, right? You had Alvin Bragg doing that. You had Jack Smith doing that. You had Fannie Willis and her BF down there in Georgia trying to do that. Nobody was successful. I mean, the amazing thing, right, is he is now the president of the United States. So Letitia, honey, baby, I am sorry. This is a totally different round. This time around, you've got Stephen Miller in a pretty big position. You've got America First, which has had 4 years to look at all this stuff. So absolutely, when they're filing an ethics complaint against you, I'd be nervous too, right? Of course you're nervous. You're completely at risk now for losing your law license. With the Elise Stefanik complaint, I want to just explain, like, it was a little bit different. It was a little bit different because you would have had to have had the court making the decision, which I believe they could come to at the appellate level, that she was overly egregious in terms of how she went after him, and it was for political reasons only. But that's a leap. In this particular case, there is no leap. In other words, if they're able to prove out these allegations of mortgage fraud, if she tried to defraud federal taxpayers by lying about where she lived or lying about her marriage status, then gosh darn it, I think you got a good darn reason there, even in the state of New York, even with all the liberal lawyers there, to absolutely disbar Letitia James, the Attorney General of the state of New York. And boom, presto, there goes her law license, there goes her AG position. I don't know what she does next. Maybe they'll try and run her. Well, that would be funny. Hey, quick shout out for our friends over at American Heart for Gold. You know, I actually just heard from my colleague at 76 Research right now. He said gold just about back to an all-time high of $3,425. Woo! I hope you were listening to me when I said to buy it way back when. If you didn't, well, you still have a chance here. I still like gold, even in this environment with it over $3,400 an ounce. And it's in part because my expectation is they're going to continue trying to weaken the U.S. dollar. Gold is priced in dollars, meaning gold prices go up because you need more dollars. I also think there are a lot of countries all around the world that are trying to diversify out of U.S. treasuries. I don't love that they're doing that, but it is the reality of the world in which we live today. So another reason for you to be looking to buy into gold. You can get up to $15,000. That's like the third reason, right? If you go with American Heart for Gold. So text Trish, my name, to 65532. Call them at 1-844-495-1115. Again, up to $15,000 in free gold. Just go to trishlovesgold.com today. Canada's in the hot seat. Canadian Prime Minister paying a visit to none other than Donald Trump over there at the White House. And Donald Trump wants to remind him, never say never. Never say, when you're talking about whether or not Canada might be the 51st state in the US of A, never say never. I first got to just say, look, I don't really think we want Canada. I don't really care about Canada. I don't want to be responsible for Canada, but I suspect Donald Trump's method to the madness is, hey, we got a big border with Canada, and, they're up there in an area where we might want to have some presence in terms of the sea, etc. So that might be influencing his thinking. I mean, it's certainly influencing the thinking when it comes to Denmark. It's Greenland, which may not be Denmark's Greenland for long, if he has anything to say about it. Anyway, Canada is one of those. It's a lot of empty land. It's kind of a nice place. We usually get along with the Canadians, sort of. Well, unless you're from New Hampshire, in which case you have a certain built-in bias dare I say, about the French Canadians. Yeah, you spend a summer in New Hampshire and you tell me what you think. I remember lots of short shorts. My mom used to call them Frenchie. Anyway, I digress. Canada in the White House today, and this guy's being told, hey, never say never, even though he's stumbling and bumbling and stuttering about how Canada's not for sale.
They get along very well. They like each other a lot.
Well, if I may, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever. But the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together. We have done that in the past. And part of that, as the president just said, is with respect to our own security. And my government is committed for a step change in our investment in Canadian security and our partnership. And I'll say this as well, that the president has revitalized international security, revitalized NATO, and us playing our full weight in NATO, and that will be part of it.
And they have, I must say, Canada is stepping up the military participation because Mark knew, they were low and now they're stepping it up, and that's a very important thing. But never say never. Never say never.
Ooh, they're not going to like that back at home, are they, Carney? Never say never. So, again, he's kind of got this thing about Canada, Canada, Canada. I think it would be a lot for us to take on, but, stranger things have happened. It kind of is the 51st state already, right? Do we actually need to be responsible for it in any way, shape, or form? I mean, who the heck is going to defend them if somebody comes knocking, right? It's going to be the USA. So I think they know that. I'm not sure we get much out of it if we bring them into the fold. We may get some more headaches. Did you see the number of illegal migrants that were coming into Canada? They got a whole illegal problem onto their own, which we would then inherit. I think perhaps his thinking is, well, then you don't have them coming across the border, or we just strengthen our border and make Canada strengthen its. But it's certainly attracted a ton of attention, has it not? Trump does want you to know, though, no matter what, we are still friends with Canada. We're going to stay friends with Canada. They are our neighbor, our very sweet, foresty neighbor up there in Canada. Here he is.
Good to see you, Miss James. Thanks for joining us.
Oopsie daisy. That was Letitia. Another soundbite of her trying to insist that she's totally, totally innocent. But I digress. I want to go back to Canada because this was absolutely, positively hilarious. I thought it was actually darn funny. I thought it was funny because he's still saying to this guy, you know what? Never say never. It could happen. So, hey. But he does point out, you know what? We will be friends with you regardless, even if you don't take our invitation to become our 51st state, and they won't. You are our friend, and we don't forget our friends. Here we go.
What's the top concession you want out of Canada? The top concession you want out of Canada?
Concession?
Yes.
Friendship.
But that's not a concession.
No, we're going to be friends with Canada. Regardless of anything, we're going to be friends with Canada. Canada is a very special place to me. I know so many people that live in Canada. My parents had relatives that lived in Canada, my mother in particular. And I love Canada. I have a lot of respect for the Canadians. Wayne Gretzky, how good, the great one. You happen to have a very, very good hockey player right here on the Capitals, who I have a lot of. He is a big, tough cookie too. He just broke the record, and he's a great guy. And we had the team here, and I got to know a lot of the players. But now Canada is a very special place. Yeah, please.
And they have Tim Hortons, right? That's my favorite part about Canada. Anyway, my husband actually grew up rather close to Canada in the Buffalo area. So he's like a walking, talking expert on all things Canadian because as a little kid, he'd watch like Canadian TV. So like every Canadian song, every Canadian athlete, every Canadian capital, you name it. Anyway, we'll see. I do like Tim Hortons. And in Buffalo, they have quite a few Tim Hortons there, donuts as well. I'm being like sacrilegious, right? Dunkin' Donuts is supposed to be the favorite of a New Englander, but I got to say Tim Hortons kind of has us beat. Just saying, just saying. All right, big crime raid going on. We got to talk about, wow, Pam Bondi coming out with big news that they're taking down a cartel in New Mexico. And this was a multi-government operation with state, local, and feds all in on it. Great news. New Mexico takedown of one of the biggest cartels that was trafficking in all kinds of stuff. Let's listen into Pam moments ago.
This multi-agency operation led by DEA with our local, state, tribal, and federal partners targeted one of the largest and most dangerous drug trafficking and foreign terrorist organizations in our country. The DEA seized 11.5 kilos of fentanyl, including an astounding approximately 3 million fentanyl pills, the largest seizure in our nation's history. These are the pills in the bags right there. The main bottom right, the head of this organization, Sinaloa organization, here in the country illegally, 6 of these guys and women here in the country illegally. His name is Alberto Salazar Amaya. He is the leader, and he was living in Salem, Oregon. With him, they got millions of dollars, cash, cars, but the drugs were in Albuquerque, Phoenix, and Utah. That's how insulated these drug dealer cartel leaders make themselves.
Wow. And I wonder how many of them are here legally versus illegally. Just saying, just saying. This is one of the big topics, right, that keeps coming up. So now that we're doing all this to actually enforce the law, imagine that. What do you do with all the criminals that you got here? I mean, that's a big concern right now. I mean, Donald Trump was trying to export them to El Salvador. That has been a sticking point, of course, for the left. I mean, they're practically camped out, right? Or were camped out in El Salvador. Something we're not hearing about Mr. Garcia anymore. I wonder why. More to come on that one. But he's saying, okay, so we need some place to put the worst possible criminals. Over the weekend, he started talking about, what do you know, Alcatraz. You guys know Alcatraz, right? Home of former major, massive criminal Al Capone out there in San Francisco land. So maybe you get that thing back up and running, huh? Pam Bondi certainly likes the idea.
The president suggested over the weekend maybe rebuild and reopen Alcatraz, put him there in the middle of the Pacific Ocean someplace.
I'm all for that. All for that. And I think it will be a cost savings. We'll have specially trained guards. They'll be in isolation. They won't be able to run their businesses. And it sends a very strong message that if you do this, you are going to be out of our society forever.
Huh. So part of this might be a little bit of marketing, right? A really scary prison. Alcatraz obviously conjures up certain images. I think there's an Escape from Alcatraz movie, that kind of thing. Scott Jennings was on CNN just last night, and, you know, he's become kind of a household name. If anybody watches CNN, you're going to be watching it for Scott Jennings because he's like the only person that will fight back against their panel of liberals. God bless him, right? God bless him. You could not pay me any kind of amount of money to go on and deal with the liberals on some of these networks. I mean, it's painful, but he does a really good job at it. He's talking about Alcatraz here. And why wouldn't we have it, right? Why wouldn't you have a place to put people? We are already short on prison space. Why not? Oh, they didn't like it. Take a listen.
This is the era of Doge. The idea of reopening a prison that's been closed for many, many decades because it just doesn't make sense to house people there. Why?
Well, does it? I don't know. He said he was going to study it. I mean, we have a prison overcrowding problem. You've been fussing about recently him sending American criminals overseas to their prisons. Don't we need more prisons in the United States? What's wrong with it?
Okay. Well, okay.
I mean, what's the matter?
All right, let's take it at face value. Why Alcatraz? It costs 3 times as much to put prisoners there than
How
to
do you
put
know?
them. You could go put them in the
You're
desert.
on an actuarial study on it over the
Okay,
weekend?
all right. Let me.
I mean, we don't know.
All right, let me. Hold on.
What's
hold on.
wrong with studying?
All right, don't take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. Here's the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Alcatraz closed after 29 years of operation because the institution was too expensive to continue operating. An estimated $3 to $5 million was needed just for restoration and maintenance work to keep the prison open. That figure did not include the daily operating costs. Alcatraz was nearly 3 times more expensive to operate than any other federal prison. It is in the middle of a body of water.
What would it cost to build a new one? How many millions? I don't know, but I know we need more prisons. I know we need more space.
All right. It's also
I'm fine to study it. I don't have a problem with studying.
It's also possible to say that this doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
It's all right, Scott, to call it a dumb idea. You know that,
Well,
right?
it's okay. Because
I mean,
I don't know that even
Trump
Trump is all that sold on this idea, to be honest.
Why not? I mean, really. You can't even contemplate it. You can't even think about it. Here's the problem you see with the left right now. Anything that Donald Trump says, anything, they're going to go bonkers over. I mean, the fact that he's trying to control the border, this actually used to be their platform. Do you guys remember when Barack Obama was, he actually rather infamously deported more people that were here in this country illegally than any of his predecessors. And you know what? He ran in part on this. I'm looking for a soundbite because I want to prove it to you. I want to show you exactly what he had to say about all of those people that were here illegally. And he had absolute intention of getting rid of them. This is the Democrat Party from not too long ago. It wasn't until Donald Trump showed up, and Donald Trump actually stole their agenda, if you think about it, right? A lot of the working class agenda that was framed around some of the, I'm not even going to say anti-immigration, but anti-illegal immigration that had been going on. I mean, why wouldn't you be for legal immigration? Unless, of course, you're trying to influence votes, unless you're trying to actually get votes, unless you're trying to actually gerrymander your way around how many representatives you have in Congress. And let's not kid ourselves. That's a lot of what this came back to, was it not? Absolutely. They were looking to have more people in certain populations in certain states in order to get more members of Congress. And they took it even further. And this is no longer conspiratorial because the New York Times reported on this. They wanted 800,000 non-citizens to actually be able to vote in New York elections. All right, I'm not seeing it here, but you know what? We can go back and look at the shorts feed anytime. Go check my shorts feed out here on YouTube because, I spoke too soon. I think we got it, ladies and gentlemen. Here he is. The left really doesn't want you to see this.
The Bush administration, has done nothing to control the problem that we have. We've had 5 million undocumented workers come over the borders since George Bush took office. It has become an extraordinary problem. And the reason the American people are concerned is because they are seeing their own economic position slip away.
Wow. Interesting. So that was Barack Obama. You go back, you look at Hillary Clinton, you look at any of the Democrats. They used to point fingers at Bush and the Republicans and say, they just want cheap labor, etc. And then Donald Trump comes in 2016, goes down the escalator, talks about how we need a big red carpet for people that are going to come here legally that we want, but we want to get rid of the illegal immigration. And suddenly that's no-go territory. Just like, maybe we reopen Alcatraz. Rather than build a whole new one, why don't we retrofit one that we have? Won't that work? And suddenly they hate the idea because they hate everything that he's talking about. I wonder if they hate this, the idea that we got to improve the FAA because we get an FAA that's a total disaster. I mean, DEI may have had a thing or two to do with it, right? We've talked about that here. But it's also the reality that we just haven't been feeding enough new people into the FAA that are qualified. I mean, that may be DEI. But nobody is coming in that can actually do these jobs. And now, big story out of Newark. I was in it myself, you guys. Remember I was flying down to Savannah and I was supposed to leave that afternoon and my flight had been rearranged. And then I spent 7 hours at the Newark, New Jersey airport, just where you want to hang, right? Lovely. I did have my son with me, so that was an added bonus. But it was in part because they couldn't get flights out. a lot of the flights that would have otherwise been going to Savannah, Georgia, that United would have been flying, were being canceled. Flight after flight after flight after flight, because I didn't know it at the time. A 90-second outage had happened at Newark Airport. 90 seconds where air traffic control had no idea what was going on in the skies. They couldn't see anything. And you know what's really scary? The backup system failed too. Sean Duffy, all over it. You know, I'll give him credit for this, because where was Pete Buttigieg? Remember when the train derailed and the whole town out there in the Midwest was suffering and Pete Buttigieg wouldn't even bother to show up? Sean Duffy's always on the scene. You got to give him credit for that. This entire administration, super transparent. Anyway, Sean went on with Laura Ingraham last night and talked about this. And he's like, look, we got old infrastructure. Thank you very much, Biden. 30, 40-year-old infrastructure that nobody bothered to update. Not to mention we need better, newer people at the FAA that are not DEI candidates that really can do the job. Here he is with Laura. Listen in.
Let's talk about what happens. We have really old infrastructure in America. It hasn't been updated in the last 30, 40 years. This should have been dealt with in the last administration. They did nothing. So the primary communication line went down. The backup line didn't fire. And so for 30 seconds, we lost contact with air traffic.
That's a big problem, don't you think?
It is. Now, were planes going to crash? No, they have communication devices. They can see other air traffic like GPS in the airplanes. But it's a sign that we have a frail system in place, and it has to be fixed. But by the way, so there's delays now at Newark. Well, if you're driving down the road at 70 miles an hour and you get white paint in your windshield, you slow down. So we've slowed the traffic down at Newark. There's a runway that's under construction, and our primary goal is to make sure people are safe. And so when you have an incident like this, both lines now work, Laura, but when you have an incident like this, you want to make sure that people are safe. And so you just have less departures out of the airport until we feel comfortable and safe that the system isn't going to go down again.
So United is
going to have to bear the brunt of some of that. They're going to have to get all the airlines together, really, and say, okay, what can we do to improve this? I'm going to go out on a limb and say, you know what? You probably need to pay the FAA guys more. Oh, yeah, imagine that. Like, I was reading, they are well paid. They're some of the best jobs you can get in government, but they work a zillion hours, and they make them retire. I think the age is 55, because they can't even let you stick around until 60, or maybe you retire at 60 instead of 65. They can't let you stay because it's such a high-stress job. Okay, well, if it's such a high-stress job, then we really, really need to pay them accordingly, right? Kind of like the emergency room doctor or the emergency room nurse. They should command a premium because of the stress level. So I don't have a problem with that. You know what? You're going to have to charge more for flights. Maybe the airlines have less profitability. Again, I don't really have a problem. And this is speaking as a, red-blooded American capitalist here. I don't have a problem with it because, above all, you need safe skies. And so when we're thinking about where our taxpayer dollars go, when we're thinking about whether or not some of the airlines should take on some of the burden, I say yes, 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 right? I mean, of all the places that our taxpayer dollars go, we ought to at least be able to ensure the safety of our skies. Thank you very much. So the Trump administration has another project that it is gearing up for. And I mean gearing up because it's only been 100 and some odd days, and this is serious stuff. We do have another situation right now. You've got Newark Airport employees just walking off, FAA workers walking off the job following an equipment malfunction. That was the 90 days I told you about. They were referencing 30 days on Fox, but the truth is it turned out to, 90 seconds, not days. That would be really bad, right? We definitely wouldn't be flying anywhere. 90 seconds with no ability to communicate. Imagine that, guys. At Newark Liberty International Airport. I hate that airport too. You know what? I think it's kind of a icky airport that's always delayed, and that's an issue. So after this failure on April 28th, which left Federal Aviation Administration workers with no ears or eyes for 90 seconds, many of the controllers at the Philadelphia-based center took trauma leave. 20% of them just walk off the job. They're like, we can't handle this. I mean, here I was saying pay them more, but that makes me kind of think twice about it. You know what? It's part of the gig, guys. Yeah, listen. I've had to cover all kinds of natural disasters as a reporter in the field. Do I get trauma leave? No. I mean, I'm sure it was stressful. It couldn't have been great. I'm sure for 90 seconds, you were absolutely terrified that all things were going to go wrong. But you know what? You get back in your seat and you do your job. That's kind of the American way, right? If you're going to take trauma leave every time something happens, then I don't think we really have a functioning FAA. Again, get the best people. I don't care what color they are. I don't care what sex they are. I don't care. Just give me the best possible people and pay them well and make sure that they're not sitting there like a bunch of sissies and saying, we need trauma leave, this, that, and the other. No, they got to do their job and keep us safe. And they should be paid and treated accordingly. So Donald Trump wants these improvements. I think he's going to get them. He better get them, right? Because we all fly. You know, there was that Black Hawk crash, horrific crash, and some people debate whether or not DEI came into that situation. It was a female pilot. We'll let that lay. We'll talk about it another time. But I would say that one of the big takeaways from that crash in D.C. was that you shouldn't have all that traffic, right? You don't want these consumer jets flying into the airport at Reagan National, all while you get the Blackhawks going here, there, and everywhere. One of the questions people are asking now is, why is it that a military Army Black Hawk was actually flying a quote-unquote VIP person? And who the heck was that VIP? Sean Duffy kind of let it slip. They think it was maybe a 2-star general. What are the 2-star generals doing, getting flown around? They actually had to have 2 of these commercial jets have a different landing pattern because the helicopter needed to come through the airspace. Give me a break. Watch.
The Army, in addition to this problem at Newark, the Army is pausing all helicopter flights near D.C. after those 2 commercial planes had to abort landings because of a Black Hawk taking the, quote, scenic route around the Pentagon for a VIP. This is 13 weeks after 67 people were killed in that horrific crash with another Black Hawk. Who was that VP they were taking the scenic tour for?
That's the question.
VIP.
Right? So they have to have a mile and a half nautical separation, nautical miles, 500 feet separation as well. They breached that airspace, the helicopter did, and so 2 airplanes had to go around. The question becomes, who are the VIPs? Is it a 2-star, 3-star general? There's a lot of traffic going into the Pentagon. The top brass at the White House, they take a Suburban or a Tesla or they take their own car. Who do these generals think they are that they have to take helicopters to go to meetings or go to air? I don't know who it was. We should find out. And well, the DOD
who do we ask? I mean, you're the transportation secretary. How do you not know?
The FAA doesn't know. We asked the DOD. The DOD has promised radical transparency. They should tell us who is qualified to take a helicopter out of the Pentagon. I don't know, but they have to tell us.
Well, could you just call up HEGSA?
Well, I should actually. Why don't
Let's
you call
him right now?
You call Pete.
Okay,
Dial
I got
in.
it. I got the phone.
She actually has a phone right by her desk.
Yeah, I do. I'm ready for that.
But those are the answers that we need. Again, when we have these near misses, you got to stop the traffic. And listen, the president, the vice president, Pete Hegseth, they all should fly in helicopters. But a 2-star? I mean, come on. And again, it's suspect when they won't tell you who the VIP is.
I'm with them. I mean, I'd really like to know. And by the way, Pete, yeah, I think you should be able to answer that question relatively soon. And Laura should call him. Maybe I'll email him. Listen, we need to make sure that we're not taking unnecessary risks or unnecessary chances. I think I was stunned, probably as much as you guys, when I found out that they actually use that for flight training. I mean, you're training people in potential conflict with consumer jetliners? Come on. We got to be able to do better than that. And we're flying these 2-star, 3-star generals around. If it was a general, we don't know who the VIP was. We don't know. And that information should come out. And Duffy's right to be asking those questions. And he knows Pete, and he can pick up the phone, and he can call him, and we need to stay on that because, no, you shouldn't be flying around VIPs and having consumer jetliners possibly in danger and having to completely reorchestrate their landing pattern. It's just wrong. You know what else is just wrong? Kamala Harris in every way, shape, or form, and the DNC, just wrong because they're promoting her appearance at the Met Gala. Oh, don't get me started on the Met Gala, but you will get me started on the Met Gala as soon as I give a quick promo for our friends over at Balance in Nature. You know, you guys are laughing about it because you know this, you knew this was coming, right? Every show we talk about Balance in Nature, but they help make this program here for you guys totally free for you and independent, right? I'm able to keep my independence, albeit I do like my balance in nature, fruits and veggies specifically, and I get my vitamin D. You know, soon it will be summer, but I don't tend to go in the sun. Maybe I'll get a little bit of sun, which will help with the vitamin D levels, but I know that I actually can keep them up no matter what, thanks to my fruits and veggies, the gummies that I get from Balance in Nature. It's interesting because you've got Robert F. Kennedy right now talking about the importance of really good ingredients and making sure that everything is healthy and safe. That's been their MO like forever at Balance in Nature. So their fruits and gummies and veggies, these are all products that are made with natural ingredients, and they're actually gluten-free too, for those of you that care. Give them a call, 1-800-246-8751, 1-800-246-8751, and go to balanceinnature.com. Use code word Trish, 35% off. 35% off, not bad, right? Plus free shipping, plus a full money-back guarantee, so no skin off your back. The DNC has stepped in it again. I mean, I'd argue they stepped in it by putting Joe up originally and then taking him out because George Clooney apparently told them to do so. Well, George and Barack. And then putting Kamala Harris in. I mean, they're just a train wreck, right? They don't really understand what day it is. Well, just to kind of lay that out for you, they're proud of one Kamala Harris for having shown up at the $75,000 ticket event, the Met Gala. You see, her in her lovely little dress. I guess she didn't get the memo on what the theme was. Something about celebrating Black male style. So I'm not sure how her gown relates to that, but nor do I care. I think it's funny that the Democrat Party is actually out there trying to sell the idea that their candidate who's so failed in every way, but they're hoping maybe can have a comeback. Good luck with that one, you guys. Is out there hobnobbing with people at a $75,000 a ticket event. That's how much it costs to go to the Met Gala. So there's also some speculation about what on earth went down in terms of who paid for this, because nobody thinks she actually paid for it. You know, they got some money, but not a ton of money, her and Dougie. She's probably hoping to make a little bit on the speaking circuit. So who paid for the ticket? Did Anna Wintour decide to just float her some bucks because she wanted the former failed presidential candidate there at the White House? We don't know. Nor, frankly, honestly, let's admit it, guys, do we care? It's just funny to me that they're bragging about the $75,000 a ticket event and how great it is that Kamala went. And I'm like, do you people not get it? Like, what do you think just went down? Why do you think America rejected her? Could it be, inflation? Could it be that she doesn't relate? Could it be that they did not believe she understood their economic challenges? And remember that infamous moment when she went onto The View and Sonny Houston just laid it right up for her and said, if you could change anything, Madam Vice President, what would it be? And her answer was, I can't think of anything. Can't think of one darn thing. I mean, I can think of a lot of things, but you know what was really front and center on everybody's mind at that point in time? Well, two things. One, inflation, right? So maybe she could have said, gee, I wish we could have done more to curtail inflation. At least then she would have shown that she cared about it or understood it or knew it existed. Or, hey, what about the border? She was the border czar. And yet they had completely failed to control the border for reasons that, you and I have talked about. We might think were even deliberate, dare we say. But she didn't bring any of this up. And so here she is, once again, let them eat cake, hanging out, hobnobbing with a bunch of celebrities. I got to tell you, I hate this event. I hate this event because I used to live relatively close to the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art. And every year, it would be such an ordeal because all the streets would shut down because we had to have all these celebrities come into town and they needed all the security and they had to shut down the streets and put out the giant red carpet. And it was so super annoying. And then they get out there and they put this all over the airwaves like anybody really cares, honestly. Do you care? I looked at the guest list because, it's out in the news and I do this because this is what I do for a living, right? Think about this. I do this for a living. I'm in the news business and I'm looking at the guest list and I'm like, I have no idea who these people are. Absolutely no idea. I mean, I'm going down a whole guest list. I maybe knew 10, 20% of the names on there. And this is what I do for a living, ladies and gentlemen. They have all these random people that they've got to invite, all these quote unquote celebrities that they're trying to make into celebrities. And they shut down the city for this. And then they shut down the airways because every morning show you turn on, they're talking about the Met Gala and what somebody wore. Atrocious outfits. Trust me, really, really atrocious outfits. Like, there's nothing even to look at. Why would I even care? Just a bunch of ugly outfits and people doing ugly things, and it's all about, I guess, Anna Wintour wants to seem super DEI in an environment that's not DEI. So that's hence the ode to black male style. You got me. But the Democrats don't get it, right? And the Democrats don't get it because, one, they're bragging about Kamala. Two, they had Kamala as their top person to begin with. I mean, who the heck would pick her? Or better yet, who would pick AOC? That's the latest and greatest, believe it or not. Ladies and gentlemen, we're hearing AOC wants to run for the presidency of the United States of America, and here she is being talked about, gushed over, if you can imagine, by some of those card-carrying Dems on Morning Joe this morning, MSNBC. Let's roll the tape.
Rev, nobody ever said that Congress was a meritocracy. I understand that AOC may be more progressive than a lot of people. I also understand that she's one of the most articulate, exciting people in the Democratic field. She goes out with Bernie Sanders, and yeah, she just draws so many people. It's very good, very effective in hearings. We've seen a lot of people. Nancy Pelosi was a progressive. When Nancy became leader, she realized she needed to represent the entire caucus. AOC certainly could do that as well. After the election, she was going around talking to people who voted for her and Donald Trump, saying, "I want to understand why did you do that? What don't I understand?" Listen, Democrats, I mean, and we're going to talk to Dave Weigel about this in a second, their approval rating is just absolutely disastrous. They don't need to keep getting people like in retirement, past retirement age, being their voice. They need somebody young like AOC. And again, it's not about ideology. She can carry the message forward for a Democratic Party that really needs to reach out to younger Americans.
They need to reach out to younger Americans, and they need to reach out in an authentic way. I think that what makes AOC effective is not only that she's younger, but that she comes off authentic without saying, I'm trying to kick the older crowd aside. Because it was very important. She did that tour with 83-year-old Bernie Sanders, while some of the younger members of Congress saying the old guard needs to retire. She's showing a balance and a maturity as a young person and a message that penetrates.
And by the way, what a great message to have. You've got all these Ivy League boys, that are in the Trump administration that went all the, no offense to Ivy League boys here or anywhere, but all these guys, billionaire Ivy Leaguers, right, attacking her, going, "Oh, she's an elite." And she's like, right. "What do you do?" I was like a bartender or a barista or whatever she was. She's like, "What are you talking about?" Right. I had to work my ass off to like stay one step ahead of creditors and debtors. I know you.
And she talks as one who was
right.
Had to work her way.
Henry, one of the commentators here in the chat, saying these two are like an SNL skit. And I totally agree. I mean, I think I remember right after the election, them coming out and saying we need less AOCs in the world. I think that was actually sort of one of Mika's big points that she was making, that we need less of this extremism, right? But now the Dems are looking to AOC to be their next presidential candidate. I mean, I'll take that all day long. I really will. I will take that all day long, because at the end of the day, America's going to look at her, one, see her as inexperienced, which she is, right? She's still quite young. I mean, we don't need the old ones, a la Biden, et cetera, but she's too young. So you get the youth. You've got her sort of, just incapacity to understand economics. I mean, look at all the jobs she turned down. Good paying jobs that could have come to Queens from Amazon. But no, she's a card-carrying member of the Socialist Party, I guess, and she just can't have industry or jobs come into her community because, no, those jobs need to go to the government. You see the fundamental difference here? That's really actually coming into sort of focus in an important way, in an important time, is you have two very different schools of thought. You got the conservatives, you've got the Trump people who believe that industry is what creates jobs and powers the economy. And that's a good thing. And we need to actually reward small businesses and big businesses with things like tax cuts and ease of doing business. And then you got the AOCs of the world and the Bernie Sanders of the world. And apparently Joe and Mika, although I doubt it because, they'll do anything for a buck. They got on a plane the next day after the election right down there to kiss the ring in Mar-a-Lago. Okay? So just saying, they're a little bit self-interested. But AOC and Sanders and all these people talk a good game about how they want to look out for the little guy. And in looking out for the little guy, they want government, 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 government. And the bigger government gets, the more they get to take of your taxpayer dollars, thereby putting the power right into the hands of themselves. So it's a power play. Do you empower the individual, the small business owner, the big business owner? Or do you empower the government? Last I checked, the reason we are the success that we are as a capitalist nation, as the number one economy in the world, is because we do believe in capitalism. And while it's not perfect, don't get me wrong, I know that, you know that. That's why Donald Trump is in there. He's made that point. Well, it's not perfect. It's the best system we've got. So we don't want to change it to the AOCs of the world. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. Okay, we got a stock market today that's given up a little bit of the gains. I mean, we had 9 days, guys, 9 days of straight gains. Dow Jones Industrial Average off about 1%. S&P trading down 0.3%. NASDAQ down 0.8% right now. The big question that some people are asking is whether or not we could be heading into some kind of recession with the tariffs. I don't think so. Only because there are some good signals out there. I mean, consider the fact that you've got oil lower, right? Rob and I have been talking about this. We just put a piece out on this. You got oil really low, which is very, very good news. Current trading price around $58, $59 a barrel right now for crude. That's a big difference, right? So that helps people because they have a little more money in their pocket because they're not paying so much at the gas pump. So oil prices being lower, that's a big, big boost. You also have some good jobs numbers. That was just reported the other day. Unemployment holding steady, 4.2%. You got 177,000 jobs, more than expected, being added to the economy. All of this, I got to tell you, is very, very good news. So when you look at the question of whether or not we're in recession, I think Scott Bessent said it best earlier today. Let's go to Steny Hoyer asking him exactly that and listen to the Treasury Secretary's response.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask you a broader question, Mr. Secretary, at the outset. The president has been talking about recession and the acceptance of a recession in the short term. Do you believe we're in a recession now?
Congressman, I believe in data, and there is nothing in the data that shows that we are in a recession. As a matter of fact, the jobs report has surprised to the upside.
The job report, of course, less than the average for the Biden administration last in 2024. But the GDP went down this first quarter of the Trump administration. If we have a negative growth in the second quarter, which is, I suppose, the traditional definition of a recession, would you agree that we are in that recession of which the president speaks?
Congressman, these economic numbers are noisy and subject to substantial revision. So I, having looked at a detailed analysis, would believe that the first quarter GDP would be revised upward. And I would also, with regards to your remark about where we were last year, we were spending 6.7%. We had a 6.7% fiscal deficit, the largest we've ever had during peacetime or non-recessionary times. So the easy thing would be to keep spending, to keep the economy running on an unsustainable path of government spending.
So, a lot in there, but when he said that the numbers are noisy in terms of the first quarter GDP, he's not wrong. There was a lot of noise only because, well, it turns out we don't actually compute the imports that are coming in, the money that's spent on imports. So what do you think businesses did? They did a ton of imports, right? They spent a ton of money. They were importing everything because they were worried about the tariffs, and they wanted to make sure that they imported whatever they needed to be able to get through the next however many months until the tariff thing had gotten worked out. So those numbers are a little bit flawed, and they'll be revised, but they still won't include the effect of all that money being spent in the import. So that acted as a drain. Whether or not we get 2 consecutive quarters, again, I think you have to discount the fact of what was going on vis-a-vis the imports when you look at that. None of it matters. Of course, you know what really ultimately matters is how people feel, and whether or not they're spending, and whether or not they're planning. And so far, so good. So far, so good. We'll get more data on this in the coming weeks. Disney's out with earnings on Wednesday. Of course, they're going to love to blame everything on Trump and the recession, right? I can see it now. Park sales way down. Oh, it's because of the recession. Maybe it's actually because Disney, you don't have a very good product. Nobody wants to see your movies. Nobody wants to go to the parks anymore. Nobody wants to stand in line for hours on end to get into your little rides. Now, that may have something more to do with it, but it won't stop them from trying to blame Donald Trump and the recession. I look at the Visa numbers that came out the other day. What they showed was still a very healthy consumer. Consumers have not slowed down their spending. So when you couple that together with lower energy prices, and you couple it together with as well the strong jobs numbers, I actually think you're kind of looking at a pretty good scenario. We'll see what the Fed has to say on that, of course, tomorrow. Reminder, if you're interested in investing, and you absolutely should be interested, I hope you're investing. That's how you grow your worth, all right? Let us help you. Code word dollar over at 76 Research, my company that I started, financial research company, 76 Research. Use code word dollar so you can get the 76 report. Take a look at those model portfolios because they've done very, very well. It is so good to have all of you here. You know, of course, the other thing that's done really well, I can't forget about gold before I leave you today, because gold has been on a tear, hitting another all-time high just today. It is really, really incredible to see, up over $3,400. I believe on Friday we're going to have the head of American Heart for Gold right here on this show, so we can talk to him a little bit more about what's driving this activity. My 2 cents: 1, fear of a lower dollar; 2, fear of Armageddon, right? Because that always exists, and it seems to have gotten ratcheted up a little bit, just a little bit, right, lately. And 3, the reality that all of these countries all around the world are trying to diversify out of U.S. Treasury bonds. They're never going to be able to diversify entirely out of Treasury bonds, because that's still, hey, after all, where you're going to put your money when push comes to shove. They've looked at Bitcoin. They're looking at gold. All of that is supporting the price of gold. Rob and I like to look at, say, the M2 money supply relative to the gold price. And right now they're kind of equal, which may make you think, okay, is this gold's top? And then you factor in the reality that the People's Republic Bank of China is out there buying gold more and more so to try and diversify outside treasuries. And I think it still offers some support, including the fact that you get a lower and lower dollar. So go check out gold, get up to $15,000 in free silver, which has rallied as well. Go to trishlovesgold.com today, or text Trish to 65532. It is wonderful to have you here. Mike, I'm glad you're still watching. I saw those notes. I'm telling you, I see it all. Cat Crazy, great to have you back. Don's always on your case, guys, to make sure that you are subscribing and make sure that you are liking. So please do that for me. I will see you right back here live again right around this time tomorrow.